5 days. That's all it took. 5 days after the brutal stalemate at Antietam, Abraham Lincoln seized the moment and issued a document that would forever change the course of American history: the Emancipation Proclamation. Now, let's be clear. This wasn't a magic wand that instantly freed every enslaved person in the country. It was a strategic military order aimed at the states in rebellion, but its impact was seismic. Suddenly, the war wasn't just about preserving the Union anymore. It was about something much, much bigger. It was now a war for human freedom. The United States was officially fighting against the institution of slavery itself. This single act completely redrew the lines, not just on the battlefield, but across the entire globe. Think about the international stage. The Confederacy had been banking on support from European powers like Britain and France. Their economies were heavily dependent on Southern cotton, after all. But both nations also had powerful anti-slavery movements. Public opinion was fiercely abolitionist. After the Emancipation Proclamation, how could the governments of Britain or France possibly justify supporting a nation explicitly fighting to preserve slavery? They couldn't. The proclamation made it politically impossible. Overnight, the Confederacy was diplomatically isolated. The South now stood well and truly alone, cut off from the foreign aid and recognition it so desperately needed to survive. But the most profound change happened right here at home. The proclamation opened a door that had been firmly shut. It declared that black men could now officially enlist in the Union Army. This was a monumental shift. For generations, black Americans, both free and enslaved, had been denied the basic right to fight for the country they lived in. Now, they could wear the Union blue and take up arms against the very system that had oppressed them. Thousands stepped forward. They came from the North, free men who had long campaigned for this right. And they came from the South, men who had just escaped the shackles of bondage, their freedom still raw and new. Imagine the courage this took. They knew the risks were astronomical. For a white Union soldier, capture meant being sent to a prison camp. For a black Union soldier, capture could mean immediate execution or being sold back into slavery, a fate arguably worse than death. They faced discrimination within their own army, too. They were paid less than their white counterparts, at least initially. They were often given the most grueling, backbreaking labor and the most dangerous combat assignments. Respect was a rare commodity. Yet, they fought. They fought with a fierce determination that few could match. Because they weren't just fighting for a country. They were fighting for their own freedom, for their families' futures, for the very soul of a nation that had for so long denied their humanity. One of the most powerful examples of this incredible bravery came at Fort Wagner, South Carolina. In July 1863, the 54th Massachusetts Infantry, one of the first all-black regiments raised in the North, was ordered to lead a frontal assault on the heavily fortified Confederate stronghold. It was a suicidal mission. They charged across an open stretch of sand into a hailstorm of cannon and rifle fire. The casualties were staggering. Their brave colonel, Robert Gould Shaw, was killed alongside many of his men. The assault ultimately failed to take the fort, but in its heroic failure, the 54th Massachusetts achieved a monumental victory. Their courage under fire was undeniable. News of their valor spread throughout the North, shattering racist stereotypes and proving to a skeptical nation that black soldiers could and would fight with extraordinary skill and bravery. Their sacrifice forced America to confront a truth it had long tried to ignore: that the fight for freedom had defenders of all colors, willing to pay the ultimate price. As the war dragged on into its third and fourth years, the initial enthusiasm on both sides curdled into a grim, hardened resolve. The conflict was taking a terrible toll, not just on the soldiers, but on the civilians left behind. In the South, the Union blockade was strangling the economy. Port cities were cut off, and crucial supplies couldn't get in. The Confederacy's own infrastructure was crumbling under the strain of war. Railroads broke down, making it impossible to transport what little food there was to the cities and the armies. Widespread food shortages led to rampant inflation. A simple loaf of bread could cost a week's wages. Desperate women, whose husbands and sons were away fighting, staged bread riots in cities like Richmond, breaking into shops and warehouses to feed their starving children. The romantic ideal of a glorious Southern cause was dissolving into a daily struggle for survival. The North wasn't immune to hardship either. While its industrial economy was booming from war production, the human cost was becoming unbearable. The seemingly endless casualty lists published in newspapers brought the horror of the war into every community. In 1863, the Union implemented its first military draft, a move that proved deeply unpopular. Wealthy men could legally pay a substitute to fight in their place or simply pay a fee to avoid service altogether. This led to the bitter cry that it was a rich man's war and a poor man's fight. In cities like Newark, resentment exploded into violence. The Newark City draft riots were among the deadliest urban insurrections in American history. For days, mobs rampaged through the streets, attacking draft offices, symbols of wealth, and, tragically, the city's black population, who they blamed for the war. The riots exposed deep, ugly fractures within the Union itself. This growing despair created a massive political problem for Abraham Lincoln. The war was costing too much, in both blood and treasure. The Union armies seemed stalled. General Ulysses S. Grant was bogged down in a brutal siege at Petersburg, Virginia, losing thousands of men for what seemed like inches of ground. General William Tecumseh Sherman's army was advancing through Georgia, but its final objective was unclear. Support for the war plummeted. A powerful peace Democrat movement gained momentum, calling for a negotiated settlement with the Confederacy. Lincoln himself became deeply pessimistic about his chances for re-election in the fall of 1864. He privately wrote that it seemed exceedingly probable that this administration will not be re-elected. The fate of the Union and the future of millions of newly free people hung precariously in the balance. It felt as though the entire grand, bloody project was on the verge of collapse. And then, just as despair reached its peak, fate, strategy, and sheer will converge on a small, unassuming town in southern Pennsylvania, a place whose name would soon echo through eternity: Gettysburg. This was where the war would find its turning point and where the nation's destiny would be decided. Thank you so much for watching. If you found this chapter of history as compelling as I do, please hit the like button and subscribe for more deep dives into the past. Don't forget to ring the notification bell so you won't miss part 4 of the American Civil War. See you then.